What do you do when you need new cabinets for your kitchen? You want to build them yourself, but you don't have a shop to build them in. You stop making excuses, set up a temporary workspace in your backyard, and get to work. My name is John. Welcome to my money pit. In my last video, I got started on the kitchen remodel, and one of the first things I did was remove two cabinets that just didn't make sense. One was just way too big and looked out of place.
That's a huge bitch!
And the other one was too big to fit above the refrigerator, so whoever the special needs owner was at the time just raised it up 4 inches, which made it stand out like Rob Van Winkle with the top down on the A1A.
That's dumb.
Now it's time to build cabinets to replace them. And the plan is simple. I'm going to replace the big pantry cabinet with 2 upper and 2 base cabinets. And then the special needs cabinet will be the same, just the right size. But before I can do that, I've got to set up my temporary workspace on my patio in my backyard. Now here's the thing. You might see my house in the intro and think, why wouldn't you just set up in one of those multiple buildings you have on your property? It's a good question, and I've got an even better answer. They're all being used for more important things, like, I don't know, making a living so we can pay the bills? All I have is a small 6 foot wide by 12 foot long closet in the red building that's basically a shed you see in the background, so everything I do has to be mobile. I need to be able to set up a workspace, do what I've got to do, and then take it down and put it away. Not because I'm afraid someone's going to come on my property and steal it. I mean, this is rural North Carolina. You want to try that? I wish you luck. It's not just me that's going to ruin your day. I got neighbors too, and we look out for each other. You're not going to have a fun time, I promise. Anyway, sorry about that. On the topic of quick setup and tear down, I've got to tell you about a product that's perfect for that. And it's going to sound like your typical YouTuber promoting a product that they were sent for free, and I can assure you that's not the case. First of all, why would anyone send me something for free? I'm just getting started. Plus, I have no intention of ever being that guy. I'm not saying the YouTubers that get stuff sent to them at no charge are doing anything wrong. I'm just saying that's not what this channel's about. I'm going to make this statement loud and clear so everyone can hear it and even call me out on it in the future. The Money Pit channel will never take sponsors, no matter how big the channel gets. Unless I get a shop down the road and Delta calls wanting to send me a unisaw, or James Hardy wants to donate siding for my house. Other than that, the answer is no. All right, enough talk. We got to get set up. The first thing we need is a workbench. This is where that product I was talking about comes in. It's the Bora Centipede. This thing is amazing. You can expand it with 2 hands and boom, you got a workbench. Well, after you put a piece of plywood on it, and when I did that, I made a huge mistake. I added a 2x4 frame to it so I could raise it up to be level with my table saw. This worked great to support pieces as I pushed them through the saw, but was way too high later on when I put a router table on it. Plus, I think I set it up wrong with the included clips for the 2x4s. I think the system wasn't fully extended, which made it a little wobbly. You'll see what I'm talking about eventually. I should have just laid a piece of plywood directly on top of the centipede, but anyway, with that in place, I pulled in my rigid contractor table saw. This is a great little saw that's easy to move around and quick to set up. It's no Delta unisaw, but it gets the job done. Then I set up my DeWalt 12-inch compound miter saw, which is also on a mobile base, and I was ready to go. So let's get on with it. There's one thing I know for certain, and that's that as woodworkers, we overbuild the hell out of everything. We use things like dados and rabbets to support the tops and bottoms of cabinets and fancy domino joiners to assemble face frames. This is an incredible waste of time and completely unnecessary. Does it give you something to show off and brag about to your friends? Sure, but
Necessary?
no. I'm going to show you a quick and simple way to build cabinets that anyone with a general knowledge of tools can do with minimal tools. They're super strong and will last a lot longer than you do, I promise. I do it this way because back in the early 2000s, I owned a custom cabinet shop in Fredericksburg, Virginia. I built cabinets with all the fancy joinery and it took forever. I had a buddy named Kenny that worked at another cabinet shop stop by, saw how I was doing it and said, "John, you're going to go broke if you keep building them this way. Let me show you how to make money building cabinets." He showed me this simple method and I immediately changed everything about how I built cabinets. And you know what? Kenny was right. I built a lot more cabinets way faster than I was before and installed these cabinets in multi-million-dollar homes in Arlington, Virginia. And they're still there to this day, as good as the day they were new. Actually, I just lied to you. I have no idea if they're still there. How would I even know that? But unless there was an earthquake or a tornado that went through there, I'm going to assume everything's fine. Plus, my phone number has never changed and I've never received one phone call about them. I promise this is an easy way of building cabinets that'll be way stronger than they need to be and will outlast you. But if you disagree and feel like this won't work, type in a super detailed explanation in the comment section as to why you think your way of doing things is better, so I can read it and not care. Everything starts with processing plywood for the cabinet boxes. Yes, I called them boxes. I refuse to call them carcasses. I don't know why, but that's a word that's always freaked me out. They're boxes. I don't need to call them some fancy word to make me feel smarter. Coplanar is another word. I don't even know what that word means. To figure out the measurements to cut these pieces, it's very simple. First, you need to determine the size of the cabinets. For the upper cabinets, I need to build two that measure 30 inches wide, 36 inches tall, and 12 inches deep. The side panels are going to measure 12 inches wide, minus 1 inch to compensate for the 3/4 inch face frame and the 1/4 inch back panel, and the length will be whatever the total height of the cabinet is, which is 36. So I need to cut 4 side panels 11 by 36. The top and bottom panels involve a little bit more thinking. We have the total width of the cabinet, which is 30 inches. I like my face frames to overhang the box by 1/8 of an inch on the sides, so we take 30 inches minus 1/8 on each side, which is 29 3/4. But we also need to subtract for the side panels. These are 3/4 of an inch each for a total of 1.5 inches, so 29 3/4 minus 1.5 inches, which gives us a total length of 28 1/4. But we're not done yet. We're going to need to leave an additional 1/4 inch on one side of each upper cabinet for a skin to cover the joinery. I promise this will make sense later. So we take our measurement of 28 1/4 and subtract another 1/4 inch. That's pretty simple math. That leaves us with 28 inches. So our top and bottom pieces need to be 11 inches wide by 28 inches long. I'm also going to need a back panel for the upper cabinets plus 2 cleats used to attach it to the wall. The measurements for the back panel are the easiest because you can just wait till the box is assembled, but for the cleats, these need to be the same length as the top and bottom, which is 28 inches, and 4 inches wide. So we need 4 pieces 36 by 11, 4 pieces 28 by 11, and 4 pieces 28 by 4. And again, to keep things simple, we're going to measure the back panel when we actually need it, but it'll be 29.5 by 35 1/4. The base cabinets are the same concept, but a little different because we don't need to compensate for the back panel. And only one cabinet will need the side skin because the other will be joined to an existing cabinet. I promise this will all make sense when we get to the assembly and the install. Just hang in there with me. Now listen, I know there's already people in the comment section that are typing up one thing in particular, and that is, can you please give us these measurements in metric? The answer is no. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be a jerk here. I live in the United States. I was taught the stupid imperial system. I know it doesn't make sense and it's dumb, but it is what it is. This is all I know. My recommendation to you would be, if you are hearing all of these measurements and you don't understand any of it because you use the smart people system, which I do mean that, it is the smart system of metric, do what I would do. Go to Google and go to a converter and figure it out. I can't do it. I'm sorry, it's too much. To cut the plywood, I used one of my favorite tools on the planet, the Festool track saw. Yes, I have a Festool, which is the most expensive of all the track saws, but what can I say? I'm a diva and wanted to get a tool that's going to last as long as I do, but you certainly don't need one that's $600 to do this job. Several other companies make track saws and some of them are super affordable. If you want my recommendation as to which one to get, I'd choose the Kreg over the Rigid, Wen, and Triton, but what do I know? I'm just a snobby Festool user. And you don't even need to do it the way I'm doing it. If you have a circular saw with a straight edge, you can do this without a fancy track saw, but this is a strategy that's never worked well for me. Why? I have no idea. Maybe my mind wanders too much or I'm just scatterbrained, but I'm just never able to keep my saw against the straight edge. Whenever I've tried the circular saw and straight edge trick, I've always had wavy cuts, but if you're good at that, you can avoid the track saw altogether. With all the pieces cut for the boxes, it's time to work on the face frames, and for this project, I'll be using poplar for my face frames because it's cheap, easy to work with, and it provides a great surface for painting. If you're going to be finishing your cabinets, trust me, you'll want to avoid this wood. Yes, it's cheap, but it might just be the ugliest wood out there. That's why people paint it. Face frames are made from tops, bottoms, and sides, which in the woodworking world are called rails and stiles. These are universal names for these pieces across the entire industry that'll apply to face frames, doors, or decorative panels. Remembering which ones are rails and which ones are stiles is pretty easy. The rails are horizontal, so just think of it like a handrail or a guardrail. Those are also always horizontal. So there you go, rails. For stiles, just remember they only go one direction, which is vertical. And One Direction is a band that has a member named, you guessed it, Harry Styles. And I'm sorry, that was really stupid. But I bet you'll never forget which ones are rails and which ones are Styles. Harry Styles. Just which ones are stiles. The rails and Harrys on my cabinets will measure 1 5/8 inches wide, which is never how I'd usually make them. I'd usually make them 2 inches, but the existing cabinets in my kitchen are 1 5/8 inches, so keep things consistent. I stuck with that. I ripped a bunch of poplar to 1 5/8 inches, and then we needed to cut them to length. To get the measurements for the face frames, it's much easier than the cabinet boxes. For the Harry Styles, we just need to take the total height of the cabinets, which is 36 inches for the uppers and 30.5 for the base cabinets. And then for the rails, we take our width, which is 30 inches, and subtract 1 5/8 inches times 2, which is 3.25, to compensate for the 2 Harrys. I also need center Harrys for all these cabinets, and these will be 3 inches wide, which is how wide the center Harrys are in my existing cabinets. I'm not going to go through the math on those because to keep things simple, you can assemble your face frames and then just measure for those. To assemble the face frames, I'm going to use the most common sense form of woodworking joinery: pocket holes. Pocket holes are God's gift to woodworkers. You can accomplish these angled little holes with super affordable jigs available at your local home center. I purchased one of the fancier ones that's about $100, and to be honest, I made a mistake. This gets the job done great, but after using it, I wish I'd gotten the one that's one step above this. It's only like $40 more, and the way the piece clamps the wood down is so much better. I definitely prefer it from the front rather than the back. Wait.
You sure about that? That's why?
Since I had the pocket hole jig out, I also cut pocket holes on the front outside edge of all the cabinet box components for attaching the face frames, and I also cut them on the ends of all of the tops and bottoms, as well as the back cleats. You didn't think I was just going to nail these boxes together, did you? Oh, there's one more thing we got to do before we can start assembly, and that's drill the holes for the adjustable shelves. For this, I used yet another little Kreg jig. This is a little contraption that costs like $30 and it worked great. It was actually kind of fun to use, but if you're super cheap, you can use a piece of pegboard for this as the jig, but I'm a sucker for everything Kreg makes. So now it's time to start putting everything together. This is the real fun part because things actually start happening really fast. I start with the cabinet boxes. These are really simple. It's just lining everything up, and I used this fancy corner clamp I bought at Woodcraft. This holds everything in place and square while I nailed it together. I think I like this little thing. It had a bit of a learning curve, but once I got the hang of it, I liked it a lot. I definitely suggest doing the nails first unless you have huge clamps to hold everything together while you drive the screws. With pocket holes being at an angle, there's a tendency for the joint to wander out of place. Nailing them first ensures everything stays lined up and you don't end up with a huge mess. Once the boxes were assembled, I attached the back panel with a little glue, nails first, and then screws. The back panel is what really makes these solid and square, and once it's on, you can stand on these things and you won't have any issues. I mean, unless you're in the middle of filming an episode of My 600 Pound Life. I mean, it might not hold that, but just do me a favor, let's not try that. The face frames go together super easy. I just use the little Craig clamps that are made to hold joints tight while you screw them together. Nothing really groundbreaking here, just glue and screws in all the joints, clean off the glue, squeeze out, and you're ready to attach them to the cabinets. After sanding them, of course. Sanding is one of those necessary evils in this game. Love it or hate it, you've got to do it. And I feel like sanding face frames prior to attaching them to the cabinets just makes life easier. To attach the face frames to the cabinets, I just put a small bead of glue down and laid them in place, making sure I had an 1/8 inch reveal on one side and the extra 1/4 inch on the other side, held them down, and screwed them on. Simple. One last thing before we take these in and install them. I also build my toe kicks completely separate from the boxes. Probably should have mentioned that earlier, but it's another trick Kenny taught me back in the day. It makes installation much easier and keeps you from having to cut the notch in the bottom of all your cabinets. For some reason, I don't like cutting those notches. I'm not lazy, I'm just smart. Okay, moment of truth. Time to get these installed. The first cabinet to get installed was the easy one, and that's the replacement for the special needs cabinet. Nothing really spectacular here, but I did realize I made a mistake. I know, you're totally shocked. It's going to be a pretty common theme for the rest of this video. You may have seen it before I took the cabinet down in the last video, the large gap on the left side of this cabinet. Well, like a total idiot, when I got my measurement, I didn't measure the opening to get my width. I just took the measurement from the special needs cabinet, which meant when I installed it, it had the same gap as the first one. Bonehead. It's really not a big deal. I just added a filler piece and it was done. Plus, it was actually a good thing because I was able to scribe that side to get it tight to the wall. So it was actually a happy accident. It looks way better than that empty gap. But now we move on to the prize. The biggest transformation of this kitchen so far. Time to install the new cabinets where the old pantry cabinet was. But before we start that, there's another cabinet I gotta remove.
That's a huge bitch.
One of the things that in my opinion is critical in kitchen design is just the simple concept of things being symmetrical. And this kitchen has a major imbalance that's driven me crazy since the day we moved in. If I pause it here, can you see it? See how the cabinets on the left of the window butt right up against the window trim while the cabinet on the right is about 8 inches away? You may not have noticed it at first, but now that I've pointed it out to you, you know it would drive you crazy too. Believe it or not, it's not an impossible fix. I'll do it by removing this little annoying cabinet that really belongs next to the stove anyway, and that'll get us close to lined up. I'll actually need to add yet another small filler to get it all lined up perfectly. Now I like to install upper cabinets first because it's way easier to do without the base cabinets in the way. I'm not some kind of genius. Every cabinet installer does it this way. I used my laser level because I have one, but it's certainly not required. You can easily do the same thing with a 4-foot level, but I like this laser because it helps with quite a few things I'll be doing on this install, including lining up the upper and lower cabinets. With the laser line, I attached a scrap piece of plywood to the wall, giving me somewhere to rest the cabinets while I attach them to the wall. This is almost critical when you're doing this by yourself. Another thing to make things easier on myself is to measure the studs and pre-drill my screws into the back of the cleats. This is so that I can pick up the cabinets, rest them on the temporary cleat, make sure they're level and screw them in. Upper cabinets are super simple, and this went off without a hitch. Now on to the base cabinets. It all starts with removing that dumb cabinet we talked about earlier, and then start getting the toe kick placed, getting it leveled and attached to the floor, and make it super simple just to place the base cabinets on it, level them and screw them down. But it was at this moment I found another huge mistake. You know, surprises to me are fine. It's part of the deal. I don't have a problem with that. But what I do have a problem with is mistakes, especially boneheaded mistakes on my part. So when I came in here and I removed part of the flooring there to get pieces to patch the other part of the floor where the island is, I measured and I gave myself like an extra 6 inches or something like that, just to make sure I didn't cut too much wood off so that when I put the new cabinet in, everything would be covered up. But the problem is, when I took that measurement, I measured it from the edge of that little cabinet that you just saw me remove, which is a 9-inch cabinet. So I cut too much of the floor out. Thought I was doing the right thing, but I was not. So now I have the pleasure of patching more hardwood floors. It's easy enough to fix, but it's time consuming, and it just really bothers me that it was my dumb fault that did that. It was my fault. I did that. So stupid. Thankfully, I had recent experience patching floors, and I had a few small pieces I could weave in to make the problem go away. Remember in my last video when I said I figured out the multi-tool was the way to go for these patches rather than the chisel? It definitely made things go a lot faster. Okay, time to finally get the toe kick installed. I got this into place, used some scraps to fill the gaps left by the flooring I removed, got everything level and positioned the way I wanted it, and screwed it down. This is super simple, and there's really no way to screw it up, and that's perfect for me right now. Once the toe kicks were set, it's just a matter of setting the base cabinets into place and position them correctly. For this, I used my laser level again to correct that inconsistency issue we talked about earlier. I got the base cabinets perfectly lined up with the upper cabinets and filled in that gap with another small piece of poplar. No, it's not perfect, and someone with a picky eye may come in and say, "What's the deal with that random filler piece?" But it's way less noticeable than the huge gap next to the window. Hey Siri, set a reminder to never invite that jerk over again.
Okay, I added never invite that jerk over again to the list.
Remember really early in the video when I said the skins for the sides of the cabinets will finally make sense later? Well, later is now. Or now is later. These skins are great because they cover up all the joinery and plywood ends and give this a really smooth look that could have been accomplished a lot of different ways, but I like it this way. I attach the panels with one of my favorite tools, which is another one of God's gifts to woodworkers, the 23 gauge brad nailer. The teeny holes left behind by this nailer will be super easy to fill during painting, and to be honest, they're so small sometimes you don't even need to fill them. The primer will fill them for you. So there you have it. 5 cabinets built in my backyard and installed into my kitchen, and I did the whole thing in less than a day. Yeah, that was a lie. It took me about 10 hours total spread out over 3 days, and that's because I'm old, have a demanding job, a badass wife to chase around, and a lot of other things to do. And I'm also not in a hurry. Plus, we had like 3 feet of snow on the ground. This is North Carolina. What the heck? In the next video, I'll be building 43 doors and drawer fronts for all the cabinets in this kitchen. These are simple to do, but take forever because, well, there's just so damn many of them. Stay tuned for that. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you then. Bye.
My husband Gregory and I wish only for that which every other couple wishes for. To tame Komodo dragons in Sri Lanka and teach them to perform Hamlet. But before I can do that...
That's dumb.
It's not dumb.
It's just dumb.
Why is it dumb?
I don't know.
Yeah, Patches. Are you sure that this is completely necessary? Yes, sir?
Tommy, if you was caught in front of a grand jury, what would you say?
Yeah.
Hey, keep it in the circus!
You know, this place has gone way downhill. What do you say we go somewhere else?
That's a huge bitch!